Hello everybody, my name is Nathan Ballou, and today I want to talk about something that has affected me personally and definitely affects a lot of us without even realizing it, and this would be stereotype threat. According to Berger, in the Invitation to the Lifespan, stereotype threat is when people feel at risk of confirming negative stereotypes about their social group, which then hurts their performance. This is not just about race or gender though. It can affect students, workers, older adults, and so many other groups. I chose this topic because it really hit home during my time in high school. I remember sitting in my psychology class, the first one I've ever taken, and the teacher literally would tell our class that we were the worst performing group she ever had. The thing is, I was overall her best student, first in the class, but my class wasn't really that good. But hearing that all the time really messed with our heads. A lot of us started to believe we wouldn't succeed, and sure enough, most of us didn't do our best because of the negative environment. Not because we couldn't, but because we already felt like we were losing. And, well, a lot of the kids in that class failed. Not me, though. Stay safe out there. And to find more information about stereotype threat, I dug deeper into the 5 sources that were, I had to do. And here's what I found. One of the first sources I found is from Steele and Arsons. Their classic study showed that black students performed worse on tests when their race was emphasized. But when race wasn't brought up at all, they just did as well as white students. This is wild because being reminded of a stereotype can affect how your brain works, bringing you down. So immediately, the black students felt like they were already being put down and, set up for failure because their race was emphasized. And second source from Spencer. I have them all listed. I'm just using the authors' names. It found the same thing with women in math. If they're reminded of the stereotype that women are bad at math, they scored lower. But when that stereotype wasn't emphasized, they did as well as others, even better. Just another example about how it's kind of like a placebo. Basically, just like you don't think about it, but then like it's brought up like, oh, you're going to fail because of this. You end up failing. And in third source I brought, the American Psychological Association talks about how stereotype threat doesn't just hurt performance. It also raises anxiety and causes people to distance themselves from situations where they feel judged. So avoidance and leads to failure and just separation. And fourth one, according to a Harvard article by Shoemaker and Johns, when we try to fight these stereotypes in our heads, it's also hard doing something like test or job at task. Our brains get overloaded and we just can't function at the same time. Okay, and fifth, I also read an article from Psychology Today, Nardio Redman, that explains stereotype threat affects anyone from any group. Whenever it's students from lower income households, first-gen college students like me, or even older adults in tech settings. So overall, it's just, from my sources, what I've gathered and learned, it's just like, when the stereotype is brought up or like focused on or just emphasized or hinted at, when it's in your mind, you fight the thought of that stereotype and like, oh, this and stuff like that. So it's already programmed in your mind to set you up for failure, which usually it happens. It doesn't happen for everyone. Some people can use it as motivation, but the common threat is that it really affects performance because now it's like affecting you mentally. Moving on. And I saw this firsthand, not just in school, but even working at HEB. When I first started, my trainer Mingo taught me how to handle life, not just the job. He gave me advice, real advice about happiness, budgeting, and balance. So financial, told me about the job market and stuff like that. And at the same time, I helped him understand English language better because it's his second language and he doesn't really get slang or certain patterns of speech. But watching how people sometimes underestimate him because of his age or accent was really frustrating, because like he's worked at HEB for 35 years, and I remember he told me that he tried to get like a big manager position, but they always said that like he wouldn't be fitting for it because like he wasn't really good at English. He was more just like a back stalker, just push to the back. And it's really unfortunate. I feel really bad for him. And this is another form of stereotype threat, when people expect less of you because of your background, and it starts to affect how you perform and feel about yourself. Mingo is kind of the exception to this, because like Mingo's been hit all his life. He has one leg and a fake leg. He has one kidney. He's not really the smartest or brightest because he kind of failed out of high school because like he was disabled and he didn't really see anything about life. And like he asked me several questions and like I help him through different things. But at first it affected him because they said he would never like be anything more than what he was at the time, which was a baseline stalker. Like he wasn't a closer, wasn't an opener, stuff like that. But like the harder he worked, he pushed and he tried his best to thrive the best he could, and he became honestly one of the best HEB workers, one of the best workers HEB has. They rely on him on many things, and when he was offered the manager position, but he just turned it down. So he is a good example about like stereotype threat can be overcome, but it did really affect him early in life. Now I'm gonna give some real life impact like an example. What really sucked with me was learning that stereotype threat doesn't always hurt you in the moment. Over time, it can affect your motivation, confidence, and even health. People start avoiding certain careers or majors just because they're afraid of confirming a stereotype. Berger emphasizes that breaking this cycle means that creating an environment that supports growth and reinforces negative labels, whether it's in school, at work, at home. We just need to lift each other up, not hold each other down with low expectations. So I'm going to use a personal example. Like I remember I'm Asian American, right? Well, Filipino, Asian American, stuff like that. What job are we supposed to have? Hypothetical question. You can answer it. First thing is doctor. The doctor is just being a doctor. Why you no doctor yet? That's what my mom sounds like. Just like she has a really heavy accent. I'm not trying to make fun of it. Even though I'm mocking my mother. But like I remember when I was first talking about what I wanted to be, like I've always wanted to be a psychologist, but she was like, is that a doctor? I'm like, well, kind of, yeah. She was like, no, she wants me to be a medical doctor or a lawyer or something like that, like high-end stuff like that. But I always thought to myself, if I try to do that, I'm kind of just enforcing the stereotype, like, oh, I have to be a doctor. And it made me actually not want to do it. Because I did strive to go, like, learn more about being a doctor and, like, go high school, be more in the medical side, like medical classes, and then transfer to college and be more on the metal, just, get a nursing degree, try to shoot for any type of doctor, like surgeon or something like that. But I just never really had the motivation for it because I was always, like, my mom always forced the fact that I needed to be a doctor because of my race. Yeah. That's just personal example. So overall, what I've learned is that stereotype threat is a real and powerful, but not something we're stuck with forever. Real and powerful because it really does affect people mentally and physically over time. Like first it'd be mentally, then physically over time, because you lose motivation for certain things and it just really eats at you. Awareness is the first step. Once you know it exists, you can call it out or fight it. Basically face yourself, because the stereotype threat, it might not always be like first thing on your mind. It's just you hear it and just mentally it immediately blocks you. You don't really like know why you're demotivated from stuff, or know why you're like performing worse than you are. But awareness, being aware of that, is a good first step to fighting it, to combating it. Support from others, self-belief, and safe spaces make a huge difference. If you're surrounded by it just goes back to the thing, surrounded by a toxic environment, you'll be in a bad situation. But if you're surrounded by a good, supporting environment, you'll be in a good situation. So the better environment you are, the better and more likely you're able to combat this stereotype threat. And most importantly, your potential isn't defined by other people's assumptions. This is a major thing that I've always that was always kind of pushed on me by my dad, because he always disagreed with my mother. But yeah, it's a big thing, because a lot of people always base what they can do, or their capabilities, based on what other people tell them, even though they're capable of so much more. And they just don't know it because they only believe what they are told, what other people tell them about themselves. And that's really unfortunate, because I know a lot of good example. Mingo again. He could have been that, but he was already in the mindset of he didn't want to be a manager by the time they finally gave him the opportunity. So yeah. But whether it was learning from Mingo, my HEB associate partner, that's what we call them, as partners, surviving high school stereotypes, surviving college stereotypes, or pushing through working full-time at HEB and being full-time at the college, while my parents, some of my friends, well, not my friends anymore, always told me I couldn't do it. It was just, taxing. I know now how important it is to believe in yourself, even when the world tries to tell you otherwise. Push to strive for success, even if people doubt you. The reach for the stars dream is something we all want. We all want to reach for the stars, acclimate our dreams, and people tell us that we can't. Now, some dreams are unreachable, so you have to have a safety cushion, or you do this, and on the side you reach for your dreams. But you always do, and you always prove to yourself how good you are. All your capabilities you learn from yourself. If you base yourself off of what other people think, you'll only bring yourself down further. And the only way you can raise yourself up is by believing in yourself and surrounding yourself with, positive outlook and support from other people. Just overall, stereotype is a huge threat to us, because it affects mentality and stuff like that. The mentality affects your mental state and physical state. And also, a lot of people, the biggest threat of it is a lot of people don't really understand that at first. They just hear it and think, yeah, that's right, and they just go along with it. And fixing it is just being aware of the situation and being able to work past it. That's all I have for today. Thank you for your time, and hope you have a good day. Thank you.